Hello viewers, welcome to Teacher Training Program. In this session, we are going to discuss the constructivist approach to ELT. In this session, we are going to discuss the meaning and definition of constructivism, the characteristic features of constructivism, the differences between behaviorism and constructivism, the constructivist classroom. We will also know the role of a teacher in constructivist classroom, and also finally the differences between learning and acquisition. Dear student teachers, English language teaching is the most sensitive and highly challenging task. The concept called learning and teaching have been interpreted by various teachers in various ways. Since time immemorial, many academicians, educationists, psychologists, psycholinguists have propounded various theories on learning. In the same way, various methods and approaches have also been propagated by various educational psychologists and academicians. And there is no one method of teaching as of now which is acceptable to all teachers. Today, before going to take you to the discussion, I would like to share a few examples. Recently, I have happened to visit Bangalore, where my son is working for IBM. In the morning at 5 o'clock, I got down at Hebbal. I called my son. He booked a cab, and within a few minutes I received a phone call. Sir, where are you? I said, I am right in front of ST Mall. Then he said, please be there, sir. I will be there in a few minutes. So within a few minutes the cab came and I got into it, and the cab started to go. Then out of curiosity, as a time passed, I just opened conversation with the cabman, and he started talking about his family, about his education, about various things. And he also talked about the present politics, the metro, Bangalore metro, and various other things. And almost for half an hour we got talking on various issues, and the entire conversation happened in English language. And I got surprised, and I have decided to ask him, what is your qualification? Then the cabman said, sir, I don't have any qualification. In fact, I studied only 6th class, and I have never gone to school afterwards. And I asked him, and how is it possible that you acquired this much English language without any difficulty? You are speaking eloquently. He said, sir, I am a cabman. I just pick and drop many people every day, and this is my profession. I have to use English. By meeting and conversing with many people, this has become possible for me. I just would like to share one more example. Just 2 days ago, I received a phone call from one of my ex-students. He is living in America. 6 months ago, he went to America, and he was a student of mine when I was working in a government in a Jilla Parishad high school. And he was a very poor student. I had to give him special coaching in English, and he has been living there for 6 months. One of his closest relatives took him to America to work in a grocery store, and almost for 15 minutes he was talking. Then finally he asked me, sir, how is my English? Then I said, your English is better than my English. Then he was talking in all American accent, and I really felt so much, because I cannot use the accent that he is using. Dear student teachers, I would like to just put these examples before you to think about it. As a teacher who has worked for more than 25 years in this field, and I have experimented, followed many methods, but my students are not using the English which these people are using. So now I just want to ask you, what are the classroom implications of these examples? Let us think about it. And which method, which approach is so relevant in the current pedagogy, in the current, present situations? In this session, let us try to understand the real, teaching and learning of English language. Now, Constructivism. What is Constructivism? According to Brooks and Brooks, Constructivism is a philosophy of learning propounded on the premise that by reflecting on our experiences, we can construct our own understanding of the world we live in. Let us look at one more definition by famous Van Glaserfeld in 1991. Knowledge is not passively received but built up by cognizing subject. Constructivism is a theory of learning that states that learning happens when learners actively construct their own knowledge. When you look at these two definitions given by famous theorists, we can understand that Constructivism believes that a child has the ability to construct their own knowledge. If we provide opportunity for the children to think, reflect, and construct their own knowledge, they can do it easily, because language is inbuilt. Every human child is born with a language system called LAD, language acquisition device. The teachers have to activate this language system in order for them to construct the language in a given situation. Now let us discuss something more about it. We generate our own mental rules and mental models which we use to make sense of our experiences. Learning is the process of adjusting our mental models to accommodate new experiences. It means when we happen to see something, when we attempt to do something, we generate our own rules and mental models. We make sense of our own experiences. And in the same way, language construction or knowledge construction is all about creating new knowledge by integrating past experiences with the present experiences. So the child has to be given an opportunity to produce his own understanding of the world in which he is living. Now, various persons have contributed to the development of constructivism. Persons like Jerome Bruner, he is an American psychologist, and Jean Piaget, Lev Vygotsky, John Dewey, and these are some of the prominent persons who have worked so much on developing this theory called constructivism. Bruner, in his theory of development, discovery and representations. And also Jean Piaget in his cognitive development, Vygotsky in his ZPD, zone of proximal development. And in this way, not only these 4 persons, there are various persons, various scholars, educational philosophers have done tremendously to develop this constructivism. The basic philosophy of constructivism is that the child can construct their own language or knowledge. Now, the fundamental belief of constructivism is, that learning occurs as learners are actively involved in a process of meaning making and knowledge construction. It shifts focus from knowledge as a product to knowing as a process. It means the learners have to be actively engaged in the meaning making process. And this is a completely shift from the conventional mode of teaching, a paradigm shift from the child was viewed as a tabula rasa, an empty slate, to the basic belief that the child has the potential to construct his own knowledge. The entire essence of education is not the pouring in process, it is something drawing out of the child's mind. And the basic view about knowledge also. Knowledge, shifts focus from knowledge as a product to knowing as a process. It means fundamentally we viewed teaching as a product. Now we have to shift from a product oriented teaching to process oriented teaching. And knowledge cannot be instructed by a teacher. It can only be constructed by a learner. And learning is not just a direct result of listening to a teacher. The teachers have to organize and develop what they hear and read. It means in a behaviorist mode of teaching, we all believe that it is the teacher who imparts knowledge to child. It is through instruction that knowledge happens to children. But now this view has to be changed. Now learning is not just a direct result of listening. It can happen in any way. So now learning depends on learner's previous knowledge. As we have discussed earlier, new knowledge is created by integrating the present experiences with the past experiences. Learning implies reorganization of conceptual scheme or cognitive map. So in the process of learning, the children will develop their own schema, their own concept map. They develop this concept map or cognitive map out of their own understanding, which comes out of their own perceptions. Learning is facilitated by social interaction. Learning cannot happen in isolation. Learning cannot happen individually. It happens only through social interaction. For example, let us take a farmer. A farmer who has never gone to any school can cultivate, can produce and carry out so many agricultural operations. How can he do it? The tilling, the sowing, the harvesting, the marketing, so many agricultural operations are being carried out by the farmer very, very effectively and efficiently. It is because through social interaction, by interacting with so many people around him, he has constructed his own learning, he has constructed his own knowledge and doing them effectively. In the same way, in our day-to-day life also, we carry out several things without having any previous knowledge about that. We attempt to do so many things by interacting with so many people. Would you remember the first event when you entered a bank and opened a savings bank account? Can you remember an instance where you went to an office and got your Aadhaar card registration done? How did you do it? Nobody has explained to you everything by holding chalk piece, by standing in front of a blackboard. It means by interacting with the people, by meeting the people, by observing, by experimenting, by committing errors, you have done it. So why can't we provide this opportunity to our children in the classroom? Meaningful learning occurs within meaningful authentic tasks. The tasks are authentic, it means they are realistic. Whatever the child experiences, they are all his own, and he deals with the authentic, with the primary real material that he faces. The learning is not a passive receptive process, but it is a meaning making process to find meaningful solutions to his problems. It means learning is never viewed as a passive receptive process, but it is a meaning making process. For example, in English language teaching, we just first tend to read the passage, the given passage first, and we allow the children to read later. What is the basic concept behind it? Basic assumption about the child. The basic assumption about the child is that the child doesn't know anything. I know, and I am the giver, he is the receiver. And that is the reason why we don't allow the children to negotiate with the text, to make meaning out of the text by using his own ways of decoding from the given text. Then let us look at the map that is given on the screen. The philosophy of construction, we can easily understand, and we can see so many concepts being spread on the screen. You know, the creativity, learner oriented, language awareness, learner autonomy, collaborative learning, projects, individual learning, learning awareness, all these are associated with the philosophy of constructivism. Learner's autonomy. In constructivist philosophy, the learner is given utmost autonomy. He feels complete freedom to select his own learning situations. He understands in his own way. He comes out with his own opinions, ideas, thoughts. And this is also speaks about collaborative learning. And you can also see the learners always, are engaged in projects, doing projects. So in this way, if you understand these concepts, I think the whole philosophy of constructivism can be understood very easily. Now, of course, let us take our discussion forward by bringing behaviorism and constructivism. Let us compare both of them. Before constructivism came into being, behaviorism was in vogue. Behaviorism is interested in the study of changes in manifest behavior, the outward behavior, the explicit behavior, whereas constructivism takes a cognitive approach, believes in changes in mental state. So behaviorism talks about outward appearance or outward behavior, constructivism talks about the mental state or mental changes. It relies on transmission of knowledge, whereas constructivism relies on transaction of knowledge. I told you this has come up from the basic philosophy that child's mind is an empty slate. So we have to transmit knowledge. Child's mind is like an empty bottle, and we just try to transmit the knowledge. But constructivism is not like that. It believes in transaction of knowledge. So it is instructional approach. Behaviorism is an instructional approach, whereas constructivism is a interactional approach. So there is a fundamental difference between these two. The teacher in behaviorist approach always gives instructions. He always explains, whereas in constructivist approach, the teacher interacts with the children. He tries to elicit by asking questions, by allowing the children to ask questions. So there will be a lot of negotiation between the teacher and the child. The interaction happens in three different ways: interaction between the child and the teacher, interaction between the pupil and the pupil, and interaction between the child and the material. So in this way, interactionist approach is followed in constructivism, and a teacher centered and teacher controlled. Behaviorism is completely teacher centered and teacher controlled. Teacher controls everything because it has come from the famous stimulus response theory, and it is also the constructivist approach is learner centered. And now the child are treated as passive receptors of language or knowledge. In constructivism, children are always active. Then let us look at one more difference: learning through positive, negative reinforcement and punishment, and constructing one's own knowledge through past experience and group collaboration is the characteristic feature of constructivist pedagogy. So this is the fundamental difference. Now let us look at this diagram on the screen. Learning is an active, engaging process. It was propounded by Vygotsky, Piaget, Montessori, and many other, Brunner, etc. So there are five E's are promoted in it. Number 1, engage; 2, explore; 3, explain; 4, elaborate; and finally evaluate. So learners build their own understanding of the topic, and then learning is not linear. We use prior knowledge or experience to expand what we know. So this is the overall idea of the constructivism. So there is engaging the children continuously in the teaching learning process, and second one is they explore new things on their own, and finally they come out of their own understanding and explain their own understanding of the concept, and at the same time they go further by elaborating it, and the teacher is there to evaluate this process. He will give his helping hand whenever he is in doubt. And in the same way, how is a conventional classroom? How is it different from the constructivist classroom? Also we will discuss. First of all, conventional classroom moves from parts to whole. So the emphasis is basically on the basic fundamental skills like LSRW. Strict adherence to fixed curriculum. There are fixed textbooks, and there will be no change at all. There is stereotyped mechanical way of textbooks. Then there will be textbooks and workbooks. Teacher gives and student receives. Teacher assumes directive and authoritative role. Assessment is done via testing or correcting answers. Knowledge is treated as inert. Students work individually. These are all some of the features of a conventional classroom. We will see them. We will never allow the children to open their mouths. We will never allow the children to express their own views. And throughout the day, there is only one voice heard in the classroom, that is the voice of the teacher. The voices, the opinions and the ideas of the children are totally crushed in the conventional classroom. And now let us look at the screen. The differences between conventional classroom and constructivist classroom. You can easily understand. The children are sitting in the conventional classroom. You can see the children sitting fixedly at one place in their benches, and the teacher is standing in the front. So teacher explains, children receive, note down, listen. They are all treated as passive receptors of knowledge. Whereas when you look at the other picture, which reflects the constructivist classroom, you can see the children, the teacher, both are engaged in the learning process. They are sharing their ideas, they are exchanging their views. The teacher is also becoming a co-learner there. And if you look at this, about constructivist classroom. So in constructivism, what are the activities? I think after having watched this video, you might have observed various activities which were carried out by the children. There are role plays, there are projects, field trips, films, discussions and debates, and oral presentations. In this way, we have different varieties of activities which allow the children to experiment, explore on their own. In this way, the children will construct their own language, their own knowledge, which comes out of their own understanding of the things. Then, what are the characteristic features of the constructivism? According to Y.G.K.Murthy, multiple perspectives and representations of concepts and content are presented and encouraged. This is one striking feature of this constructivism. Multiple perspectives. There are divergent ideas allowed in the constructivist classroom, because children are born unique. Every child is special. No two people think alike in this world. So this divergent thinking is promoted in the constructivist paradigm. Teachers' role is limited to guides, monitors, coaches and facilitators. So unlike behaviorist pedagogy, we can see that teachers always guide the children. They act as mentors, they act as coaches, facilitators. Whenever the children are in doubt, they go to their rescue, they explain to them. Then activities, opportunities, tools, environments, and at the same time the awareness, there is self-analysis, self-awareness, self-regulation, self-reflection and self-awareness. These are promoted in the constructivist classroom. Children will do everything self. So the ultimate objective is autonomous learning. The individualized learning is possible in constructivism. Then students play a central role in mediating and controlling learning. Children, they play a very, very important role. Then learning environment is authentic, realistic and natural. Whatever the material they use, that is first hand material, primary material, the material which is available around them, and knowledge construction is possible, and but not knowledge reproduction. Generally in conventional classroom what happens is the knowledge that is given by the teacher is reproduced. So in place of repetition and reproduction, real construction of knowledge takes place in a constructivist classroom. Knowledge construction takes place individually, collaboratively through social interaction and experience. This is also one of the striking features of this. So knowledge will never take place individually. So it happens collaboratively and through social interaction and by experience. So we are talking about the experiential learning, and also problem solving, higher order thinking skills and understanding are emphasized in this constructivist classroom. We are talking about higher order thinking. So higher order thinking is promoted in constructivist paradigm. Cooperative and collaborative learning are favored. So there is cooperative learning and collaborative learning, which is totally absent in a behaviorist mode of teaching. Then scaffolding is facilitated to help students perform beyond the limits of ability. For example, we know ZPD, zone of proximal development, propounded by Vygotsky. In this, it believes that the child has the ability to perform beyond their ability if proper assistance, proper scaffolding is given from time to time. Learners are provided with the opportunity for apprenticeship learning. Then child's autonomy and initiatives are accepted and encouraged and respected. So child is respected, child's voices are respected, child's ideas and feelings are respected. Actually this is what is prominently stated in our NCF document also. In National Curriculum Framework, it has prominently stated. Then errors provide an opportunity for insight into students' previous knowledge construction. Errors are not treated as failure. In fact, failure is not a failure unless it is viewed as a failure. In the process of learning, the children tend to make mistakes. They are understood in a positive way. Positive feedback, constructive feedback is given to the children. There is no overt correction in the error treatment. Then open-ended questions are asked and responses of children are awaited. There will be open-ended questions. Open-ended questions means they allow children to use divergent ideas, and there is nothing like one answer is right, the other answer is wrong. There is nothing like right or wrong. So children's responses are welcomed, they are invited and they are encouraged and respected. Students are engaged in dialogue with teacher and with each other. Students always engage in talking. This talking, it's a meaningful talking we are talking about. A meaningful talking, meaningful dialogue. The teacher also develops dialogue with the children. He engages the children in a meaningful context. Then in a constructivist classroom, learning moves from whole to part. Pursuit of student questions, interests, primary sources or manipulative materials. It means learning unlike behaviorist mode of teaching, in constructivist mode of teaching, learning moves from whole to part. It means that is Behaviorism moves from parts to whole, whereas it moves from whole to part. That is why in language learning and teaching, we talk about whole language philosophy, acquisition mode of teaching, acquisition mode of learning. And the children always question, their interests are promoted, and the primary sources of material is utilized in the classroom. And there is, we talk about dynamic texts in place of static texts, and the instruction in place of, instructors interact or negotiate with the students. Assessment is done via student works, observations, points of view, etc. Then process is as important as product, and sometimes process is more important than product, because process is very, very important. Even in the classroom transaction process, the process is given prominent place. If you follow the process of teaching, process of learning, or process of discourse construction, the process will take care of the product. Knowledge is dynamic or changes with the experience. Students work in groups. Then role of teachers. What is the role of the teacher in the constructivist paradigm? According to David Jonassen, identified three major roles for facilitators to support students in constructivist learning environments. Number 1, modeling. Number 2, coaching. Number 3, scaffolding. So, assessment. Let us look at assessment procedures. Oral discussions happen in the classroom, and KWL, it means what we know, what we want to know, what we have learned, how we know it, and we have mind mapping, we have hands-on activities, pre-testing. These are all the assessment methods that we follow in constructivist paradigm. And let us look at the present English textbooks and constructivism. We all know very well the curricular reforms happened from 2012 onwards. We are following now new textbooks. The present textbooks have been designed in tune with the guidelines by the NCF, and there is a lot of scope for children interaction. There is a the designing of the textbook itself gives a lot of scope for the children to construct their own knowledge at each and every stage. For example, in a lesson there are 8 components. We are following a modular approach. In this, for example, it opens with a picture or a slogan or a quotation. So at that stage the teacher interacts with the children. It gives a lot of scope for the children to think and construct their knowledge, come out their own ideas. Then transaction process. We have designed a transaction process now in the present pedagogy. So in transaction process we have for example, we have face sheet interaction. In face sheet interaction or otherwise style sheet interaction, or interaction based on a video, or interaction based on a quotation, the teacher engages the children in the meaning making process. He will ask the children questions, elicit responses, and provide them ample opportunities to come out of their own ideas and experiences. And at the same time, for example, in transaction of reading, there is individual reading, there is collaborative reading, there is reading aloud by the teacher, reading aloud by the children, and a scaffolded reading. At different stages in the reading process, the child is completely engaged in the reading process. Then in post reading we have discourse construction. In discourse construction also we ask the children to write on their own after so much interaction with the children will come out with their own ideas in the form of writing or in the form of oral production. In the same way, assessment procedures, we are following CCE method of mode of assessment, in which we have a formative assessment. In formative assessment, we have reading and reflections, we have written works, and we have projects. All these things will promote their ideas and their collaborative thinking, and there is a lot of scope for their divergent thinking. And we have also teachers planning and preparation in the present pedagogy, in the present curriculum. So let us look at these textbooks. Now in these textbooks, all these textbooks are full of pictures, and pictures promote a lot of thinking, a lot of logical thinking among the children. So that is possible in the present textbooks. And now we have certain academic standards, and the academic standards are helpful for the teachers to promote this thinking among the children. So that is why we can see oral discourses and written discourses. We have nearly 21 discourses. 17 of them are targeted in the 10th class itself. So from first class onwards, first class to 10th class, children are engaged in writing various discourses on their own. So after careful sensitization, careful interaction, the teacher tries to promote their thinking, and careful monitoring will happen, and the children will come out of their ideas and produce various varieties of discourses. So in this way, in present pedagogy, constructivism is being followed, and constructivism to English language teaching paradigm shift. Even in paradigm shift also we have taken very carefully. In paradigm shift, we are talking about the performance versus competence. We talked about performance in the sense the performance of LSRW, but now we are talking about competence, the competence in carrying out these LSRW. And we are talking about instead of conscious learning, we are talking about non-conscious process of learning. We are talking about the non-conscious way of learning in the sense the acquisition mode of training. It means previously we talked about learning, now we have shifted from learning mode of teaching to acquisition mode of teaching. And the same way, imitation, in place of imitation we have shifted to theory of construction. Previously the children were expected to imitate the teachers, but now they are expected to construct their own language. In the same way, learning is viewed as a spiral growth instead of linear. In the same way, in place of transmission of knowledge, we are talking about transaction of knowledge. And risk avoiding, in place of risk avoiding, we are talking about risk taking. The children will commit errors. We allow the errors to happen in the classroom. And there is no failure in the present system. Previously there was a failure or no failure, but now there is no failure. Today we are giving a lot of scope for the children, and there is, in place of competition, there is cooperative learning. So children will cooperate with one another. They share their ideas freely and fearlessly. In this way, there are various benefits in the constructivist pedagogy. In this, the children will enjoy. The children learn more and enjoy learning more when they are actively involved rather than passive listeners. Education works best when it concentrates on thinking and understanding rather than on rote memorization. Constructivism concentrates on learning how to think and understand. So friends, with this we have come to the end of today's session. Hope you have understood the concept of constructivism and how constructivism is happening in our classrooms. Thank you very much.